Gary Mark Skinner, the founder of the Watoto Church Ministries, was born and raised in Africa. We caught up with him at one of the babies' homes, which looks after babies that are picked from different areas in Kampala and some parts of Uganda.
I'm African right to the core. I'm a third generation in Africa. My father, my grandfather both lived in Africa. My grandfather came to East Africa, to Kenya in 1936. So Africa is in my heart, it's who I am.
Born in Zimbabwe to missionary parents in 1952, at the age of 16, he left his family and his beloved Africa to attend Bible college in Canada. After graduating in 1973, he traveled throughout North America as a guitar player and lead singer with the music Evangelism team.
And so when I was a teenager, I said to my parents, I want a guitar. And they thought, well, you know, it's another fad. Let's buy him the cheapest guitar we could. So they bought me this little white guitar. And that's how I learned to play the guitar. But actually, that little white guitar got me into a lot of girls' hearts. I used to sing songs, and the girls would all, ooh, you know.
Skinner then returned to Canada for 4 years of pastoral ministry, where he met his wife Marilyn and together moved to Zambia as missionaries in 1979.
And that's actually where I met my wife. She was a keyboard player, and I was invited to join this rock and roll band, and she was invited to join this rock and roll band, and that's where we met. I was singing and playing, and I turned around and looked at her. She was playing the keyboard, and she winked at me, and that was the end of it.
The move to Africa had always been on Gary's heart, but the location and meaning didn't become clear until 4 years later.
God very clearly called me to Uganda, even though I had never lived in East Africa. But I feel very much at home in Uganda. I feel that God, by his love and his grace, has allowed me to have an impact on a lot of Ugandan young people especially. And I feel very much at home here. And if the Lord allows, and if Uganda allows, maybe this is where they'll bury me one day.
Looking at Uganda in the late 80s with the civil wars that was taking place in different parts of the country, this didn't stop Skinner from pressing on with his goal that he felt God had set in his heart.
We would see bodies on the streets in the morning. We were broken into more times than we can remember. Our first 2 cars we lost at gunpoint. So it was very difficult days.
He then set up a church in the heart of the city, first called Kampala Pentecostal Church and later Watoto. It particularly draws the youth.
Everything we do is about raising the next generation of young Ugandan leaders who will bring transformation to their community. That transformation is what Uganda needs. And I say this, and I feel very strongly about this. That's not going to happen through some political effort or some economic effort. It must begin with a change of heart, because all of us, by nature, are wicked.
In fact, this later on prompted him to come up with the idea of coming up with a program to look after orphans and also care for women living with HIV/AIDS.
We began to find the most vulnerable orphans, the ones that were throwaway babies. My dream is to transform, whether it's childcare or caring for vulnerable HIV-positive women. That's my dream.
But who were your role models?
His name was Ivan Raymer. We named our first school in Uganda after him. I learned so much from him about integrity, about character, about optimism and faith, about being nice to people, about being careful who I criticize and how I criticize them. He was a role model for me. And then we both happened to move to Uganda from Zambia. And he eventually left during the time that that Museveni was marching into town and all the problems that were happening, and some people shot guns into their home, and they left and they never did come back.
Passionate about Africa and Uganda in particular, Gary still believes Uganda can attain and grow faster than where it is now.
Let's live our lives in such a way that whatever we do, we can say, I'm doing this for God and I'm doing this for my country. If we really lived according to that motto, we would change Uganda. Corruption would die. We would start being kind. We'd start driving properly on the streets. We wouldn't put up shanties. We wouldn't put up on the road reserve.
Gary has also mentored many young people and together with his wife formed Watoto Children's Choir that travels around the world to preach the gospel. So successful has this group been that they are now household name and represented Uganda at the highest level. Proceeds have gone towards orphans.
And incidentally, they're going to sing in the month of May at Windsor Castle for the Queen for her 60th coronation anniversary, our Watoto Children's Choir.
I believe that the greatest institution on the planet is the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ.
To Gary, success to another level cannot be attained alone, but together with a loving wife besides you. And so he talks about his wife, Marilyn Skinner, who is also a speaker at different conferences all over the world.
Marilyn, my wife, is a huge mentor to young African leaders, pastors, and their wives. She's just an amazing person. I would be far less than half the man without her. She's a great support, a great help. I love her, I'm proud of her. After 38 years of marriage, I love her more than I've ever loved her before. It's a beautiful thing to see and watch and be a part of.
To Pastor Gary Mark Skinner, it may look like he has achieved everything he wants in life, but to him, the journey has just begun. And to the ordinary person, what lessons does one learn from it? To Gary Skinner, it's love that cuts across everything if one wants to achieve in life. Maurice Ochol, NTV.